Dramatic pause. The night was thick with tension, shadows stretching across the cold stone walls of the queen's fortress, as if they themselves feared her wrath. Her name was whispered in trembling voices, a ruler so merciless that even the bravest trembled at the thought of crossing her. Pause. Her whip was legendary, an instrument that left not only physical scars but deep, unshakable fear etched into the souls of those who dared defy her. Yet, in a story where countless had fallen under her relentless fury, there was one man who survived, a solitary figure who carried the marks of her cruelty, yet lived to tell the tale. Suspenseful pause. Why him? What made him different? That was the question no one could answer, and the mystery alone chilled the air with suspense. He had been an ordinary man like any other in the queen's domain, until the day he found himself standing in her shadow, knowing the whip would strike. The queen's eyes, sharp as daggers, watched his every move, and her presence alone commanded obedience and fear. Around him, the hallways echoed with screams of those who had failed before, the air thick with smoke, sweat, and despair. Yet even in this terrifying moment, there was something different about him, an instinct, a glimmer of defiance, or perhaps a secret strength that set him apart. Slight pause. As the story unfolds, the viewer will step into his shoes, feel the sting of the whip, the terror of the queen's wrath, and the tense uncertainty of being the only one left standing. This is not just a tale of cruelty. It is a journey into survival, cunning, and the thin line between life and death under a ruler whose mercy never existed. The fortress loomed like a dark sentinel over the land, its jagged towers piercing the sky. Inside, the queen sat upon her throne, a figure of absolute authority, her eyes cold and unyielding. Pause. Her subjects whispered her name in fear. Her enemies prayed she would never notice them. Her whip had earned its own legend. Its strikes left scars that marked both body and soul. Tales spread across the kingdom of men and women who had dared to defy her, only to vanish under the lash of her wrath. The hallways were lined with shadows, the air thick with anticipation and dread. Tonight, another soul would face her judgment. But in a crowd of trembling faces, one man's eyes did not quiver. There was something different about him, something that even the queen had not yet discerned. Perhaps it was courage, or maybe an instinct born from survival. As he stepped forward, the weight of the queen's gaze fell upon him, and a shiver ran through the room. Every onlooker knew the inevitable. He would either break or disappear like the rest. Before the queen's wrath fell upon him, the man had a life that few could imagine. He was not born into privilege, nor had he sought rebellion, yet fate had drawn him into the queen's path. Memories of his family, friends, and quiet moments flickered in his mind as he walked the dark corridors, each step echoing like a drumbeat of impending doom. He remembered hearing stories of those who had stood before the queen, faces pale, backs bent under the weight of fear, only to be broken by the whip. He thought of their screams and the haunting silence that followed, a silence louder than any cry. These reflections steeled him, making him realize that survival required more than courage. It demanded understanding. He had studied the queen's patterns, watched her moods, noticed the smallest cues in her eyes, the twitch of her lips, the subtle gestures of her hands. Knowledge, he knew, could be as powerful as steel. The queen's chamber filled with electric tension, as attendants cleared the room and all eyes fell on the man. His heartbeat was steady, a deliberate calm in the eye of an approaching storm. Pause. He knew what awaited him. Every motion in the room was a warning, every glance a reminder of the power he faced. The queen, draped in her regal yet terrifying attire, rose from her throne. The whip hung at her side, coiled and ready, its leather shimmering in the torchlight. She circled him slowly, each step deliberate, as if weighing his soul against the cruelty she had perfected. Around them, courtiers and guards held their breath, sensing the spectacle about to unfold. The man's mind raced through strategies, each more desperate than the last. Escape was impossible, resistance suicidal, yet within him burned a quiet defiance, not loud, not reckless, but focused. The queen raised her arm, and for a moment time seemed to pause. Every story he had heard about the whip flashed before him, each tale ending in pain and despair. But he refused to let his story end the same way. In that brief, suspended moment, he found clarity. Survival would demand everything he had and more. The whip cracked through the air like thunder, and the room shuddered at its sound. Pain exploded across his back, scorching him with fire and fury, leaving a trail of red that would not soon fade. Others would have fallen, screaming, begging for mercy, but he gritted his teeth and endured. Every strike was a lesson, every lash a message. Obedience was survival. Yet beneath the pain, he discovered a strange awareness, a focus born from necessity. He learned the rhythm of the queen's movements, the slight hesitation before her strikes, the subtle patterns that could save him. His body ached, his lungs burned, but his mind remained clear. Around him the crowd murmured, astonished by his resilience, and even the queen's eyes flickered with a hint of surprise. One by one her lashes struck, leaving scars and testing the limits of his endurance. Pain, he realized, could not break him if he refused to surrender his spirit. As the whip finally fell silent, the man stood shivering but upright, a figure marked by pain yet untouched by defeat. How he survived while others succumbed was not magic, nor was it chance. It was strategy, perception, and instinct honed to perfection. He had studied her patterns, predicting her moves and reacting with precise timing. Beyond skill, there was something else, an understanding of human nature, even in its darkest form. He recognized fleeting hints of hesitation, glimpses of mercy buried beneath cruelty, and exploited them with careful subtlety. The queen, frustrated yet intrigued, scrutinized him, sensing his endurance was not mere luck. He had survived through observation, through calculated restraint, and by keeping his mind sharper than his fear. His scars were a testament not to defeat, but to endurance, each mark a story of survival and cunning. The room was silent, heavy with disbelief and tension. The queen had never encountered anyone like him, and for the first time, her aura of unchallenged dominance wavered. Whispers spread among the courtiers. How could one man withstand her legendary wrath? Pain had marked him, yet he stood taller than ever, and the fire of his gaze hinted at resilience no whip could touch. He felt every scar as a reminder of what he had endured, a map of the terror that could have ended him, yet did not. Outside, the kingdom carried on, unaware of the singular survival that had just occurred within the fortress walls. He would return to the shadows, carrying not just the physical scars but the burden of understanding the queen's cruelty from within. Survival, he knew, was only the first step. Alone in the quiet that followed, he traced the scars along his back, feeling the sting still fresh, yet tempered by a strange pride. Each mark told a story, not of defeat, but of survival against overwhelming odds. He reflected on the lessons learned, the value of observation, patience, and restraint, the necessity of reading one's adversary with precision, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. The queen's wrath had tested him to the limits of endurance, yet he had emerged not as a victim, but as a living testament to resilience. He realized that the fight was far from over. The scars were permanent reminders that danger lingered, that the queen's reach was long and her vengeance unending. Yet, he also understood that the knowledge gained in surviving her fury would serve as a shield for battles yet to come. In the silence of his reflection, he made a promise to himself: to survive, adapt, and never again be at the mercy of cruelty without purpose. His resolve hardened, his mind sharpened, and he prepared for the uncertain path ahead, where every choice could mean life or death, freedom or enslavement. The story of his survival spread quietly, whispered among those who had witnessed it, carrying both awe and fear. He was no longer merely a man who had endured the queen's wrath. He had become a symbol of resistance, cunning, and the will to live against impossible odds. Yet he did not seek glory or revenge. He understood that true survival required patience, strategy, and vigilance. Every scar reminded him of the cost of defiance. Every memory of pain reinforced his determination. The queen, ever watchful, would remember him, perhaps respect him, perhaps view him as a threat, And in the shadows of the kingdom, he would move carefully, using the lessons of pain and endurance to navigate a world ruled by fear. His story was not simply one of suffering, but of triumph, the triumph of resilience over cruelty, of spirit over oppression. In the end, he survived not because he was stronger, but because he was wiser, sharper, and unbroken in heart. And as the echoes of the Queen's power faded behind him, he stepped forward, a survivor marked by scars but defined by an unyielding will to endure, live, and outlast even the most ruthless of rulers. The scars etched across his body tell the tale of pain, fear, and unimaginable endurance. Yet they are far more than reminders of suffering. They are proof of survival, proof of a spirit that refused to bow under the weight of a ruthless queen's wrath. He walks forward now into a world that once seemed impossible to navigate, carrying with him lessons that no one else could have learned, the kind of knowledge born only from facing death and outlasting it. The Queen may still rule with fear, her whip still striking terror into those who dare defy her, but her power has been marked by one man's endurance, a quiet defiance that whispers of resilience even in the darkest corners of her realm. While others fell before her fury, he remains, not as a hero seeking glory, but as a survivor, sharper, wiser, and unbroken. His tale reminds us that survival is never about strength alone. It is about courage, cunning, and the unwavering will to live. In the end, though the scars remain, so does hope, and the knowledge that even under the harshest of rulers, life, spirit, and defiance can endure. Pause and fade.